Let's now take a look at another type of homeostasis. Not negative feedback, but positive feedback. Remember, negative feedback was where the effect or the outcome negated or did the opposite of the stimulus. So if it got hot, we cooled down. That was the effect. If we got too cold, we heated ourselves back up again. So that's the negative type of homeostasis. But positive feedback for homeostasis, this is where the outcome or the effect amplifies or exacerbates the stimulus. If the stimulus is to go up, then the outcome is to go up even more. And you might be thinking, well, in what scenarios would we need to do this? Well, let's take a look at birth. So when bub is trying to push its way out, so bub's head, think about this, bub's head is trying to stretch the uterus. Now, this stretch of the uterus is actually the stimulus. Stretching of the uterus. Now, what does this do? Well, the stimulus gets picked up by receptors, and the receptors will send this signal to the control center. Now, again, the control center in this scenario is the brain. Specifically, it's what we call the hypothalamus. And we'll talk about the hypothalamus when we do the nervous system. But what the hypothalamus of the brain does is it goes, okay, the uterus is stretching. Why is it stretching? I think it's stretching because a baby is trying to come out. So the brain goes, I know what to do. I'm going to send a signal out to an effector. And the effector here is the uterus itself. Okay, we're sending a signal back to the uterus. And what are we going to tell the uterus to do? We're going to tell the uterus to contract. And this is the effect. The uterus is contracting. Now, why would we want the uterus to contract? Because if the uterus contracts, it's going to help push bub out. But think about this. As the uterus contracts, it's pushing on bub's head, right? It's pushing over some part of the baby, which further stretches the uterus. So even though the uterus is contracting, it's further stimulating those receptors and continues to amplify. Now think about this whole process, right? The aim is to get bub out. So bub's head, let's go do this from the start. Actually, we forgot to write down all our different parts here. There we go. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Actually, just for completion's sake, let's do this. That's the afferent signal, don't forget. This is the efferent signal going away from the control center. So, bub's head is pushing its way out. It's stretching the uterus, stimulating various receptors. These receptors send an afferent signal to the brain, specifically the hypothalamus. It sends an efferent signal out and away back to the uterus, which is the effector, to tell the uterus to contract. When the uterus contracts, it helps to further push bub out, but it further stimulates stretching, stimulating hypothalamus, stimulating the effectors, and it contracts again. Think about what's happening here. This whole thing is going round and round and round, further contracting, further pushing, and at some point, bub gets popped out. Now, once bub is out, this is brilliant. Bub is out, safe and happy, and what happens to the stretch stimulus? No more stretch stimulus. So there's no more stretch stimulus, no receptors, no afferent signal, no efferent, no contraction. Everything relaxes. This is a perfect example of not just one of the most wonderful things that can happen in nature, but also a perfect example of positive feedback in homeostasis.